Welcome back, and welcome to your new method instruction for session 9. This session is going to introduce you to a very special method called Headless Way. This method was invented by Douglas Harding, who passed away in 2007, and has been spearheaded by Richard Lang ever since. Most of the instruction for this session is going to come from Richard's publicly available internet videos because no one is better at teaching this than he is. Richard also does periodic workshops around the world, and if this method resonates with you, you should absolutely consider attending them. The Headless Way methods demonstrate how deceptively simple a practice can be that transitions people into fundamental well-being. During our initial research phase, we were traveling around the world interviewing and researching people who experienced fundamental well-being. And we encountered so many finders who had transitioned to fundamental well-being using this method. The surprising thing is that many of these individuals had tried countless other methods, often for decades, before encountering Headless Way and giving it a try. And I can tell you that in many cases, they were stunned that decades of hardcore meditation practices hadn't worked, but this method had. You'll see why soon. It's just such a simple method. There's no theory behind this method. To use it, you just have to disengage your intellect and not try to figure it out. You just have to do it. There's nothing to figure out. It just is what it is. Douglas discovered a relatively ingenious series of hacks that just plain work for many people. To get them to work for you, simply turn off your analytical mind to the greatest extent you can and do the exercises. Let's jump in right now to the very first one. Be sure to follow along and do the exercises with the video.
Just to give a little introduction, I suppose, that what we're exploring here, who am I? Who am I? Is a non-verbal experience, and let's go straight to the experience, and then we can explore as we like what it means to us as we go along, which is the richness of being together, I guess, because we've all got a different reaction to this experience. So a very simple way of drawing our attention to this non-verbal experience is visually, if we hold our hands out in front of us and just look, and obviously you can see your hands, and then if you bring them back towards you past your head, you'll notice your hands get bigger and your fingers begin to disappear, and you can keep going all the way probably to your wrist, and then you bring them forwards and your hands appear again. My hands disappear into nothing here. That's how I'm describing it. You can describe it in a different way. Or another way to think about it is you just can't see your own face. So that's it. Yeah, we can have a cup of tea now.
But what does it mean?
What does it mean? Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, we have, obviously, we've got lots of experiments for guiding our attention to this special place that each of us is looking out of. This openness, this clarity, this silence, this stillness. And obviously each of us will react in a different way, so enjoying listening to each voice here. But another experiment to guide our attention here. We're guiding our attention to a very special place, aren't we? Right where we are. And each of us has special access to this place because we're looking out of it. And very different from what we look like. Our appearance at a few feet or so. But we have another experiment is the pointing experiment. And I'm going to encourage us today to all join in, not just in sharing our reactions, but having a go at guiding us all through the experiments. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity to be together and because you can't see the nothingness where you are more clearly or less clearly than anyone else. That's true, isn't it? Mm. Yes.
It's very democratic.
Very democratic. Yeah. So, Sam, would you like to guide us through the pointing experiment?
Well, this is a non-verbal approach, so it's about relaxed attention is all is required. And we're going to use a wonderful apparatus called the finger, which has been used ever since humans learnt to point for guiding attention. So it's an attention guide we're going to use. It's our finger. So let's start by pointing the finger at something in the distance and just let your relaxed attention fall on that object, that surface. And notice that it is a certain distance away. It has a shape, a colour, a texture. And it is a kind of surface. It's a opaque. Okay, now let's bring our attention a bit closer to where we're looking out of, and we're going to look at the floor near our feet. So we're pointing down to the floor, and we're seeing the same thing with relaxed attention. We're not wanting the floor to be any different than it is. We're just seeing the way it is and allowing that to be. And we're noticing that it is again a surface. It's got a colour and a texture. It's opaque. All right, coming closer still, point to your own foot. And again, we have a shape, a colour. Might not be able to describe exactly what the shape is or what the colour is, but we can see clearly what it is. It's independent of any words we might have about it. It exists as a perception. And again, it has colour, shape, and it's a closed surface. So now we're pointing at our knee. We're getting closer, getting warmer. The knee again has got a shape, form, colour, and it is a surface. Closer still, point at your own chest. Now we're getting quite close to where we're looking out of, but there's a distance between us and what we're pointing at. And again, it's got a colour, it's got shape. And now it's got a bit of movement as well. And it's a surface. Now point at where other people can see your face. Point into where you're looking out of. And notice whether the kind of attributes that we've been describing about what we've been pointing at previously still apply. Is there a distance between you and where you're looking out of? Or are you now at zero distance? And is there anything enclosing you? Is there a surface separating you from the world? Is there any shape, any colour? Is there an object there of any kind? Or are you built like me, which is to say, as kind of open space containing this veranda and all the people on it? So just to emphasise the difference between what we've been pointing at previously and what we're pointing at now, get your other finger and point out into the phenomena, into the veranda, and notice that the finger that's pointing away is pointing at things that have shape and colour and form. They're in time. They are surfaces. While the finger that's pointing back, I find, is pointing at nothing like that. It's pointing at a kind of awake emptiness, an openness, which is in the room. It's on the veranda. It's in physical space. It's just something that's very easy to overlook. Okay.
Thank you. So we're just doing these very simple awareness exercises for guiding our attention back to who we really are. And I think it's good to spend the day together on this subject, because our lives are so busy. I often overlook this. And so today is dedicated to helping each other keep making that journey back to this very obvious place. Would someone else like to guide us through that in your own words, just guiding the group's attention? Someone like to try that? You would? Marvellous. Thank you.
So please take your finger. Notice your finger is out there in space with a shape and colour. Point your finger to something in the distance. Just make the outline of that object with your finger. Use your finger as a pointer. And notice it has a definite shape and fills up a definite space in front of you. Bring your finger down to the floor in front of you. It's closer, but it also has a shape and a texture. Now bring your finger to your knee. You might have the feeling of your knee. You can see it also has a shape and a colour, a lightness or a darkness. Now bring your finger to your chest. You can see your chest has a shape, a colour, and maybe you have the sense of your chest from the inside. You also have the sense of your hand from the inside pointing. Now point the finger to your face. Where is your finger pointing to? What does your finger point to? Notice that you can see shapes around your hand, but your hand is contained within a space that you're seeing from. Does what the hand points to have any shape or colour or texture? Does it have any sense at all? Proprioception? Can you feel it? Or is it clear and open? Thank you.
Obviously, we don't have to feel any particular way about this, do we? It's non-verbal, non-emotional in that way. We have feelings, I have feelings, we have thoughts, and they're different for each of us. So, would someone else like to take us through that? We're just...
I'll give it a go.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Jessie.
Oh, you want to do it? That's okay.
There's lots of time today. We've got...
And there are lots of experiments.
Yeah.
So point to something in the distance with your finger. And notice the form of it, and the structure. and the shape. And the definition. And then bring your finger to the floor and have a look. And notice the different colors and textures and squiggles and has shape and has form. And then trace your finger from wherever you can see on your leg and slowly bring it up to where you can't see it anymore. Can't see anything. Just that border. And then take it into where you only can see your finger. And then instead of looking at your finger, just concentrate on what your finger is pointing to. As if you were looking at the floor or a shape or an object. Really concentrate on what's your finger looking at. What's it pointing to? Very good.
Perfect.
It's different every time.
That's the good thing about getting,
It's fresh.
Yeah.
I must have done this pointing exercise dozens of times, but I always find it's different. And it seems to deepen this whole process for me. Yeah.
Yes.
I get more of a sense of this openness in comparison to all of this out here that, as we were saying, has shape and form,
Yeah.
and the formlessness of this.
I think what confused me about the process was that, some time ago, was the fact that you can feel from the inside your face. So you feel the solidness of it, and you still were not aware of the emptiness.
The sensations of your head, for example.
Yes, the sensations.
And how do you
find
find?
the object? Was the object out there?
Yeah.
So the theory of it being empty is fine, but you're still feeling the solidness of your nose or face or whatever.
And that confused you. And does that confuse you now?
No,
Why not?
it just doesn't. I don't know why, and I'm not going to look into it.
Well,
That's the problem, I think, that certainly myself, that in intellectualizing everything.
How was that for you? Incredible, isn't it? It all just comes down to an awareness that's simply here in every moment. Often, people in fundamental well-being say that when they transitioned, they were amazed it was all so simple. They wonder, what did I spend all that time working on and studying about and trying to find? Can't tell you how many times I've heard that out of finders' mouths. Literally hundreds, if not over 1,000 times at this point. It's just all so simple. It just really is. Another very common phrase is that fundamental well-being is closer than anything else, right? You can hear this out there in the community that's into this if you've had any exposure to a wide range of materials. They say fundamental well-being, it's closer than the experience of your breath. It's closer than the experience of your thoughts. It's closer than the experience of your heartbeat. It's closer than literally anything else that you can imagine as an experience. And you may think to yourself, if you're not in fundamental well-being, what in the world are they talking about? Well, an exercise like this can truly bring that experience home very rapidly, all just by producing a simple perceptual shift. You see, simple hacks like this can be extremely effective in pointing to a more fundamental containing awareness. When you hear a sound, something has to recognize it. I'm not talking about the part of your mind that catalogs a sound and says, oh, that's a bird, and it's maybe this type of bird, and I have this emotional attachment to this type of bird, and whatever else. I'm talking about a more fundamental layer of your perceptual awareness that notices and contains everything else. It notices the sound. It also has any thoughts about it, feelings about it. They're all contained within that deeper layer of awareness. That's the layer that's more intimate to you than anything that it contains possibly could be. That layer is why you're aware of your breath. It's why you're aware of your thoughts. It's why you're aware of your heartbeat and so on. So of course, it's going to be far more close to you than any of those things that it's making you aware of or that it's containing, because without it, there'd be nothing there to recognize. Those other things are just being contained by it. They're one step further than that fundamental awareness. It's truly amazing how many different techniques have been discovered through trial and error, over the course of hundreds, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of years. We really don't know. If you were to just watch the previous video and not follow along, you'd probably think to yourself, okay, that exercise is pretty silly. I can't imagine that would do anything. But then when you do it yourself, for many people, magic happens. Okay, let's continue with more from Richard. Remember to follow along.
But let's go into that. That's great, John. If you touch the back of your head now, this approach is about just being awake to what's actually given rather than what we imagine, I suppose, or think. Now, on present evidence, what colour is that sensation?
Doesn't have a colour.
Doesn't have a colour. And how big is that sensation?
Oh, pretty big.
Depends. Depends how hard you press it.
Oh, if hit it with a hammer, it'd be really big.
So where is it happening? Where? On present evidence, where is it happening?
The sensation
Yes.
On the back of my head.
in my
In
neurons.
your experience, in my experience, it just happens.
Yes. I don't find a head in which it's happening. I don't find neurons.
That's true.
Pardon?
That's true.
Yes.
It could be happening anywhere.
Anyway.
That's good. I like it.
Let me guide us through a little journey here, just to move from vision to the other senses. And so just take you on a little journey, like telling you a story. Are you ready? Okay, so we call this the single eye. And it's not really an eye. It doesn't have a shape or a color. But one of the experiments to draw our attention to the singleness of it is this. You make two holes with your fingers like glasses, and you can see a dividing line. And when you bring them towards you and put them on, what happens to the dividing line? It disappears. But, yeah. So, in other words, the two become one. True? Yeah. So it's a single eye, we call it. Now if you bring your hands and go around the whole edge, you see that your hands disappear all the way around into nothing, into clarity, into clear light. So I'd like you to notice several things which excite me about this. Is when you look at any object in the view, you can compare it with size to another object. So if you look at me, I'm bigger than the bottle. So my size is in a way relative. Either I'm bigger or smaller or roughly the same size. And anything you look at in the view, you can say, well, that's bigger than that or smaller. Right? Because you can compare it with another thing. Now you look at the whole view. How big is it? Well, there isn't a second eye, single eye, to the right to compare it with, is there? Right? It's the only one in town. Everything within it has something else to compare it with, but the whole is incomparable, they call it. They call it the one. Where is the one? Well, you're looking out of it. There's only one view. Fantastic. Now, when you look at any object within the view, like my body or a chair, you can see it's surrounded by other objects. It's got a boundary and there's something all the way around it. It's got an environment. It's got a background. It's placed against a background, like a picture on the wall. Now when you look at the whole view, is it placed visually against another background? Is there anything around the edge? If you take your hands again to the edge, that's the place I mean. I find nothing around it. Do you find the same? So it's not inside anything bigger, is it? So it's single, just one. I can't say how big it is because there isn't one to the right to compare it with. I can't say what shape it is because it's not set against another background. So now let's just...
Are you talking about the whole perceptual view?
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, right, okay.
The whole view is kind of hanging in nothing, isn't it? Or we might say it's hanging in consciousness.
Floating world.
This is very different from what we look like from the outside, isn't it? From the outside, you know that for others here, you're a person on a chair in an environment. But from inside, one's not inside anything. So now we are going to explore the same perception with our other senses. And just being aware that this view is single, there isn't another one next to it to compare it with, it doesn't have a background, it's not inside anything, it's free, it's uncontained, it's who we really are, it's who we all really are. And you can't get it wrong, you can't half see this nothingness, can you? Can you? No, no. Everything's in it. Now if you close your eyes, then you no longer see the visual scene. But I find a kind of darkness instead. Do you find that? So I encourage you to use your voice throughout the day. I'll say something about that as well. So, on present evidence, how big is that darkness? Really big. Because I don't find a second darkness to the right or the left. It's true, isn't it?
I don't even find the idea of size applies to it.
Yeah, it's I'm the same.
Yes.
Size doesn't really make sense.
No.
I think it
bigger than when I was seeing. That's why I was differentiating the two sizes.
You feel bigger than when you were...
It feels bigger in the darkness
Okay.
than when I was sort of trapped by that sort of peripheral blurriness.
Uh-huh. And within the field of darkness, I can identify shapes and dots of light. Do you find something similar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can compare the things within it. You say, well, that's a big dot, I suppose. That's a very tiny one. That's kind of moving around for me. But the whole field of darkness I don't find set again in a bigger environment visually. Is that true for you?
Yeah.
Infinite.
That's why it's so calming, because there's nothing to compare it to.
Nothing to compare it to. Yes.
So you kind of give up trying to compare it to something, because
You can't. Oh, it's wonderful, yes.
It's nothing for the grappling hooks of the mind to sort of get a hold on.
Mm. So, the wonderful thing is this is an experience. It's not a matter of understanding or even a feeling. Now, if we pay attention to sounds, so lots of different sounds, beautiful bird song, voices, an airplane, we can distinguish between the sounds. One's human, one isn't human. Some are loud, some are soft. Some we like, some we don't like. But how big is the whole field of sound? Well, I don't find a second field of sound next to it to compare it with. Is that true for you?
Mm.
There's one listening, one field of listening. And I don't find this field of listening, of sounds, set against a bigger background or contained. I can't say how big it is. I'm not even able to say where it is. In consciousness. And all these sounds are arising just spontaneously, aren't they, in this nothingness? Was someone going to say something there?
Oh, there's another question, Richard.
Yes.
What is the sound of you?
What is the sound?
Of you,
Of you.
the listener.
Yes. How would you answer that? Good answer. So now we move our attention to body sensations, the field of body sensation. And you can distinguish between different sensations, and I guess some are pleasant and some are not pleasant, and some are a bit to the left, I suppose, and some to the right. How big is the whole field of sensation? Well, again, I don't find a second one to compare it with. There's only one field of sensing. And I don't find it contained inside something else. we identify with our body sensations. So when we say how big is the field of sensation, we're saying how big am I? Do I have a boundary? Am I contained inside something else? No. Are these body sensations central in a box, separate from the sounds? I don't find they are.
No.
No. Now we move our attention to thoughts and feelings. And be aware of your thoughts and they're changing, and you can imagine, count slowly to 5 and imagine the numbers. There's a kind of thought, mental object. And then imagine a blue circle. There's another mental object, as they say. Or remember the face of a friend. So you can distinguish between different thoughts, different images. But how big is the whole field of thinking, of imagining? I don't find a second field of thinking to compare it with. And I don't find these thoughts contained inside anything. And the same with feelings, reactions. Different reactions I'm aware of, different feelings. How big is the whole field of reaction, feelings? I don't find a second one. And actually I can't find any way of separating my thoughts and feelings from the birdsong, from sensations. They're not happening in separate boxes. They're all happening in this one consciousness. Consciousness is a word. It makes it sound like a thing. It's not. So as you're listening now, isn't my voice, so to speak, inside you? And the birdsong? No less than your sensations. Is that true? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's open our eyes. You can do the comparing thing with age, actually. You know, you look at one thing and you say, well, that's older than that one, right? Mm-hmm. You know, or that is younger than that. But how old are you? Well, there isn't another one next to you to compare you with, is there? Which is rather nice.
I get very interested in why I don't rest in this awareness all the time. And what generally is the inconvenience that drives me out is there's something that's coming up, and it's generally a feeling of some kind that I have somehow not owned as being my own. It's like something, it's like when your foot is asleep and it wakes up, it hurts for a little while, you know? If your foot's gone to sleep, you've got pins and needles. Except emotional pins and needles is much worse, and we tend not to want to go through that. But once you see this and you want to start living from it, you've got to allow that process to happen. So, but if you know that, I found like knowing that makes it my attitude to what I'm feeling, what's coming up, different. It doesn't make it stop hurting, but it makes it more like an alarm clock than an affliction, if you know what I mean. It's like an alarm clock. It's like, I can use this as an opportunity now to actually be more present and be aware of this. Because that's really the refuge, isn't it? That's the refuge and the liberation, is to be aware of this while you're feeling terrible. And you can, that's the amazing thing. Because we've been conditioned to think that you can't feel your true self unless you're feeling blissful or godlike or something expanded.
That's the big spiritual cell.
It is, and it paints you into a dreadful corner. It really does. Whereas if you can be aware of this, whatever is going on, which I've found to be true, I'm continuing to test that. But even in really feeling terrible, some dreadful thing coming up that you've stored for, since you were pre-verbal is coming up, and every fibre in your being just feels awful. But there's still this space in which it's happening, and it's not cooped up in a skin bag. Because that's the dreadful, unbearable
Feeling
thing.
locked in with it.
Yes, feeling shut up in it. That is the real.
So what is the way out then, or what is just the awareness?
Just
of
the
it?
awareness.
Just
that
and just watching what's happening.
Yeah, watching what's happening and being
Like
present
it's a
to
show.
it. Yeah.
Sorry?
It's the sadness show, or it's it's the God is gripping my chest and I'm feeling tight and
What I
sad.
find is what doesn't happen is those thoughts, oh God, I'm going to feel like this forever.
Yes.
Those thoughts may arise, but it's kind of like I don't have to believe them.
So how about if we do another little experiment and then perhaps explore the implications of it. And this is the turning one. And you've probably not done this one. No. And so most of us have done it. We stand up and you point back at your no face and you slowly turn around and notice whether you turn or the world turns. I find the world is going past my finger. Do you find that? Yeah. So you're still and the world is moving. Yeah.
That's what they do when they do dervish dancing, don't
Yes, yes.
they? They just look at the...
At center, if you like, you're still. Always still. Okay, so now just stay standing and I'd like you to notice something else. And so you just, you can drop your hand now if you like, and just look ahead and notice the one view. And you can't say how big it is because there isn't a second to compare it with. And you can't say what shape it is because it doesn't have a boundary, there's nothing around it. So shape and size are relative, as we've already been thinking about. And movement, I suggest, is relative. So in other words, you can tell my hand is moving because you can see it moving against the still background. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right? Because if the background was moving at the same pace, you wouldn't be able to see it moving. Right? So movement in that sense is relative. So if you move from left to right, just sway a bit, you can probably see someone moving against a background.
Yeah.
Right? Now you look at the whole view and you see it has no background, right? It's not pinned on another bigger background. So you can't move it, can you? Because there's no background to move it against. Is that true? It's kind of fun, isn't it? You say, I'm going to see if I can move it. Right? The whole. Well, where did, I think I'm going to move the whole 2 feet to the left. You can move anything within it.
I think it was somebody like Thomas Aquinas or somebody, they called it the unmoved mover or something.
Yes, that's you.
Moving, unmoving.
Great.
Pointing.
The centre of the sun.
I love that. You can't move the whole thing.
I love that.
You can't sort of, flip it. Let's sit down.
Welcome back. Let's keep this theme going by practicing along with a stillness-related video from Richard's website. And that website, by the way, is a remarkable resource. We'll be using a number of his videos here, but there are many more for you to explore, along with text-based methods that he hasn't made into videos yet, other people's additions and their ideas and comments and methods that they've come up with. And, it's just an incredible resource. You really should check it out if this method resonates with you. Okay, let's continue on with Richard. So here we go again. Be sure to follow along.
Beyond my finger I see the room going past, but this side of my finger I see no movement at all. Here at centre I'm still. It's the world that's moving. Notice how this is true whenever you're on the move. When you're walking, you're looking from boundless stillness as the ground moves under your feet. When you're cycling, you don't move. It's the road that's moving, rushing past underneath you. And when you're in a car, enjoy watching the landscape flow into your stillness. You go nowhere whilst your destination comes to you.
Let's continue on with Richard. So here we go again. Be sure to follow along.
Hi. In part 1, we began looking at the difference between our public and private identity by doing the pointing experiment. First of all, we directed our attention outwards at things. Then we directed our attention inwards at ourselves to see if we are things at centre or no thing, capacity for the world. In part 2 we'll continue our exploration of our identity, starting with an experiment where we look in a mirror. We'll then continue with other experiments, exploring who we really are from different angles. These experiments invite us to take a fresh look at ourselves. They invite us to awaken to the truly blessed condition that is our innermost self. I can't see my face here, you might say, but I can see it in the mirror. Doesn't the mirror show me who I am? Doesn't it prove that I'm not space at centre? I'm a thing, a person. Let's look in the mirror and see what we find. When I look in the mirror, I don't just see what my face looks like, I also see where it is. It's there in the mirror, a couple of feet away, not here at my centre. My mirror shows me what I am at that distance, not what I am here at 0 distance. Here at 0 distance, I'm the opposite of what I see there in the mirror. There's my appearance, here's my reality, clear, boundless awareness. When you look in the mirror, you see a different face from mine. But do you see anything here different from what I see, this side of the mirror? Aren't you also looking out of faceless awareness? The mirror is a great device for showing me my appearance. It's one of the ways in which I become aware of who I am for others, aware of my public identity. But am I that person here at centre? No. Here I'm not Richard, I'm capacity for the world. What's your experience? What a great teacher the mirror is. It shows me that Richard is there at a distance from me, not here at my centre. Instead of finding Richard here, I find this clear being, this boundless capacity that's full of the whole world. What a joy not to be a person at centre, but to be the source and container of everything. And how wonderful that seeing who we really are is so obvious, so simple, and so available. In the closed-eye experiment, we paid attention briefly to the location of our minds. Let's look further into this, but now with our eyes open. Where are our minds? Are they central, in our heads, separate from the rest of the world? Or are they at large, undivided from the world? Others tell me that my thoughts are in my head. I accept this way of thinking about my mind, the public view of me. My mind is here, yours is there. But my private experience is different. My thoughts are not in my head here, simply because I don't find my head here. Instead, I find boundless awareness. This awareness contains both my thoughts and feelings and the world. My mind is undivided from the world. Here's a way of illustrating this. I'm looking at this apple from the emptiness at my center. I see its shape and color there, from this shapeless, colorless space here. I'm also thinking about the apple. It's red, it's round, it's ready to eat. Where are my thoughts? Others say my thoughts are in my head, but I find no head here. Instead, I find capacity. Capacity that is filled both with my thoughts and the apple. My thoughts about things are not distant and separate from those things. My thoughts are out there, connected to the world. Obviously, others do not see my thoughts there in the world, but my experience is different. My mind is at large in the world. I find no dividing line separating my mind from the world. It's the same with my feelings. I feel pleasure in seeing the color and shape of this mango. I feel a desire to eat it. My feelings and reactions are not contained inside a person here at my center. They're out there in the world. My feelings of wonder merge with the snowdrops. My excitement isn't separate from the fire. I'm capacity for a world filled with feeling. When we live as if our minds are central, it's not surprising if sometimes we feel full to bursting with thoughts and feelings. There's a lot of things going on in a very small space. But when we see that privately we're empty of mind at center, that all our thinking and feeling is out there in the world, a great weight lifts from our shoulders. How good it is to be free of our minds at center, and how our minds love to be set free in this way. When we let them go back into the world, they breathe and expand. We become more creative when we don't hold on to our minds at center, when we're consciously open to the source. And we become more warm and generous-hearted when we don't hold on to our hearts at center, but let them be where they belong, out there in the world.
How are these exercises going for you? Great, I hope. Richard had an important line in there when he said it was about the experience and not the understanding. That is super important. These exercises are just experiments that are meant to be done. You do them and hopefully they produce a result for you. They are not meant to be thought about or analyzed or anything like that. Many people think that fundamental well-being is about adding something to your life. They think, okay, I'll do this program and it will add fundamental well-being into my life. But the reality is, fundamental well-being is largely a game of subtraction. It's about seeing things from a very different perspective because of a shift that focuses you in a different way and really forces a new view. And one result of that new view is an emptying of concepts, ideas, beliefs, and so on that you've built up to this point. That's what this class has been focused on doing. Only a small percentage of this program is conceptual in any way. There's a very good reason for that. The conceptual stuff is mostly just there to help you get beyond the concepts that you've previously accumulated, because those can get in the way of an experiential method helping you to shift into fundamental well-being. What's interesting with the Headless Way material is that on the surface, I imagine that someone who just happens across headless.org might find it really weird, right? I mean, to run across people who are insisting that you don't have a head, that you don't have a face, who insist that you're not looking out your eyes, that all sounds crazy, right? It takes being able to shift your perception and ignore some of your key beliefs to be able to accept that perspective as valid in any way and to use it to your advantage. These workshop videos clearly have some finders in them. For example, consider the guy in the first video clip who talked about how parts of his face no longer feel solid, right? And when he was asked, what do you make of that? His answer essentially was, I'm not going to think much about it. Why would that be his perspective? because the method is working for him and he doesn't want his intellect to mess it up. He's refusing to fall back into the trap of the mind. Of course, the mind is saying your nose and your face are solid. What are you talking about? And if he accepts that, he knows that he runs the risk of turning an effective technique into a less effective one for him. He doesn't want that. He wants the benefits that the technique gives him, not the suffering that his mind gives him. So he's making a decision to hold his beliefs lightly. On one level, of course, he knows his nose and face are solid, but on another level, seen from a different perspective, they aren't. And they don't feel like they are. So he holds it all loosely so that these multiple perspectives are all possible. And he can get the benefits of the techniques. You need to do the exact same thing. Okay, let's move on to more instruction from Richard. Like the last videos, these next videos are going to be from his website, where you can find a great deal more information and techniques. I've carefully selected some key methodological outtakes for us to use today. Again, be sure to follow along and actually do the exercises.
Hi. In part 3, we'll explore how conscious facelessness reveals a radically new perspective on relationship. Then we'll look into how being aware of this awake capacity at our center might help us cope better with stress and with pain. We'll also see that our consciousness includes everyone and everything, that we're distant from nothing, and that we're looking out of a boundless single eye. One of the areas where it really makes a difference to be aware of our private identity is in relationship. I'm aware that publicly I'm face to face with others. For you now, I'm face to face with Muka. However, this is just the outside view of our relationship. From our point of view, it's different. Privately, we are face to no face with each other. I have Muka's face and she has mine. With the help of the camera, I'll show you what I mean. Here is my experience. I don't see two faces, only one, Muka's. Here I'm capacity for Muka. Instead of confronting her there with my appearance here, I'm built open for her. She is within me, face there to no face here. From my point of view, Richard has disappeared and has been replaced by Muka. In this sense, I'm not Richard, I'm Muka. Looking at me now, do you see your own face at the same time? Are you face to face with me or face to no face? Are you living behind an appearance there, closed off from everyone around you? Or are you built open for others? In reality, isn't everyone within your being? Of course, our views out from this space are different. For example, instead of having my thoughts and feelings in your space, you have your own. In such ways we're different. But I find here at center nothing that separates me from you. There I have your appearance. Here I find this reality that has no one's face on it, no one's name on it. It belongs to you, to me, to everyone. When we identify only with our appearances, it's not surprising if we feel separate from others, and then find ourselves acting from fear, from insecurity. But when we're also aware of who we really are, aware of our common identity, our relationship with others, and the way we act towards others begins to change. Others are no longer just other, they're also ourselves. Being aware that all are within us, that all are a unique expression of this one self, gradually our fear of others begins to dissolve, and our hearts open. When we identify only with what we look like, we think of ourselves as inside our bodies. Then when we experience stress and pain, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and trapped. It seems that there's only the stress and pain, that there's no way out. But when we see that we're not inside our bodies are inside us, in this awake capacity at our centre, we discover an inner sanctuary that's unaffected by our stress and pain. Being aware of this sanctuary doesn't make the stress and pain go away, but it does make available an inner detachment that means they're easier to cope with. Here's an experiment that explores this subject. Look at your hand. I'm not looking at my hand from behind my face here. I'm not distant from my hand. It's given right here in this spacious awareness. I can see the shape, colour and movement of my hand there, given here in this shapeless, colourless, motionless capacity. And I can feel the sensation of my hand there, in this sensation-free capacity here. Of course, I identify with my hand. This is my hand, my body, not yours. You have a different body coming out of the emptiness at your centre. But I'm not in this hand, it's in me. I am my hand because I'm capacity for it. Right now my hand feels relaxed. At centre I'm neutral. I'm capacity for the relaxed feeling there. Making a fist, I now feel tension there, but nothing changes here at my centre. Just as it's shape there to no shape here, so it's stress there to no stress here. At centre, I remain unaffected, free of the stress. Gently pressing my nail into my finger, I experience discomfort. The discomfort is there in my hand, not here at my centre. When you do this experiment, what do you find? Being aware that our innermost being is never stressed or in pain can make a difference in our lives. When we attend to this safe haven inside us, we see that our stress and pain are surrounded by space. They're happening in stillness, in clarity. The stress and pain are real, but so is this clarity. And this clarity isn't affected by whatever happens within it. Being aware of our inner peace and freedom makes it less likely that we'll become overwhelmed by our stress and pain, or that we'll add extra stress to a situation by tensing against or resisting what's happening. Instead, it's more likely that we'll be able to relax and respond calmly and effectively. Looking in at my centre, at the place I'm looking out of, I find capacity, clear, boundless awareness. Looking out from my centre, I find the world. The nearest thing in the world that I see is my own headless body. You will of course see your body emerging from the emptiness at your centre. Each of us is capacity for our own body. Looking beyond our own bodies, we find other people. Being capacity at centre, our consciousness now includes others. There's a dividing line between our bodies, but no dividing line at centre. Looking out, we find many. Looking in, we find one. Reaching out and stroking my friend's dog, I'm capacity for her dog, face there to no face here. Each of us is capacity, not only for other people, but for animals as well. Outside in nature, my consciousness now includes the rest of life and the surrounding environment. At centre, we are one consciousness. Looking out from this consciousness, we find the whole world is within us, from this individual human body of ours to the furthest galaxy. This view of who we are has profound implications for the way we relate to others. Awareness of the differences between ourselves and other individuals, nations, religions and races is important, but it's only half the story. If this divided way of seeing ourselves is the only way we see ourselves, then it's not surprising if we experience fear, greed, hatred and conflict. But if we also see that at centre there are no dividing lines, at centre we are one consciousness, all are within us, then surely this awareness will make a big difference. This isn't just a nice idea to believe in. We can test it whenever we choose. So the question is, are we going to settle only for a half-truth that divides us and leads so easily to conflict? Or are we going to welcome the whole truth, the truth that all our differences are contained within this one consciousness at our centre? The future of the world, its peace and its health, may well depend on whether we say yes or no to the whole of ourselves, to who we really are. There's not one thing in the universe that's distant from our inner self. Between any two things there's always a distance. Between my thumbs there's now a distance of about 10 centimetres. But what's the distance between anything in the world and the aware no thing at our centre? Measuring between the church there and the emptiness here, the ruler shrinks to a point. Not only that, there's nothing here at centre to measure from, to attach this end of the ruler to. The church there is right here, no distance away. Everything is right here, within this boundless awareness at our centre.
How was that for you? All of these Headless Way exercises are like little perceptual hacks. They work on you from different angles and in different ways, and it's sort of like when you're trying to loosen a lid that's stuck on a jar. Sometimes it works to run it under hot or cold water. Other times it works to bang on it a little. Other times to get something like a knife or a screwdriver and kind of pry under it a little bit. And still other times to get something like a strap wrench to help you get an extra grip on getting it off. It's really that type of thing that's being done here with these exercises. So let's keep exploring. Again, be sure to follow along and actually do the exercises.
If we want to know what time it is, then we might look at our watches. I can see that it's now 4 o'clock. My watch tells me what time it is, there at that distance from me, there on my wrist. What time is it at 0 distance? Here at my centre, there at your centre. Well, let's have a look. Looking at my watch, I can see the second hand going round. The hands of my watch gradually mark out the passage of time. Movement, change and time go together. When I look here at my centre, I see no movement, no change, no time. Here at centre, I'm timeless. I'm looking from this timeless awareness here into time. And yet there's no dividing line between this timeless centre here and time there. Of course, I'm still aware that for others, I'm in time. Publicly, we're all in time, but privately, time is in us. So although outwardly time will outlast us, inwardly it won't. Psychologists say that our deepest fear is death. When we see that at centre there's no time and therefore no death, we see that our deepest fear has no foundation. The fact that our innermost being isn't a product of time, but is the source of time, is a truly majestic condition to find ourselves in. No king or queen comes anywhere near the majesty of who we all are at centre. However, being majestically above time, so to speak, doesn't mean that we ignore the world, for there's no dividing line between our eternal home and the world. Conscious of our timeless inner majesty, we're likely to find ourselves more involved in the world, not less.
Okay, that's where we're going to end on this video with Richard. This page contains a list of the videos these segments were drawn from. He has a whole workshop online that you can watch and much more. He's really a fantastic guy. This session, I'd like you to practice the Headless Way for a minimum of 30 minutes per day. If you can do it longer, if you can do it for an hour, that's even better. You can use the exercises that were covered in this class or any of the other ones from his website. Really dig in and go for it. Experiment with these methods as much as you can during this session. I am not kidding. when I say that this is one of the most transformational methods out there. This is the thing, I would say more than anything else, that has worked for the most people who have tried tons of other stuff, much to their surprise. All right, that's it for this video. I'll see you again next time.